All across America, there's something in the air. At a time of year when many try to escape it, there are some who seek out the freezing cold and embrace it. Because in order to play one of the world's hottest sports, you need to start with a cold sheet of ice. And that's just the beginning. The better you get at this game, the more it rocks. Curling is a sport of skill and strategy, where success depends on a smooth delivery and an iron will. And victory can be decided in the smallest of margins. Last week here in the Twin Cities, that margin was a single point as the U.S. women fell just short against China. Tonight, in this elite round-robin event, Team USA sets its sights on a New Zealand squad still searching for its first tournament victory. Can the Americans take the next step towards the top prize in this showcase? Let's find out. There's something in the air, but it's not the cold. Friday night is curling night on NBCSN. Time to crank up another NBCSN curling night presented by the United States Olympic Committee. And a return one more time to the Twin Cities of Minnesota. Downtown Minneapolis and St. Paul looking brilliant on this evening too. And ready for the action again. 4 countries from across the globe all coming into this part of the Midwest to showcase their skills in the great sport of curling. The United States, Japan, China, and New Zealand. And on this show, looking forward to seeing the youngest squad here, Team New Zealand's women, against the United States. The action from Fogarty Arena in Blaine, Minnesota, at the Four Seasons Curling Club. This draw 5 of 6 in the double round-robin competition. Jason Knapp happened to be joined again by Olympic bronze medalist and 8-time U.S. national champion Pete Fenson. And Pete, the United States coming in here looking to bounce back after a difficult loss to China.
Yeah, it's always good after a defeat to regroup, come back out, continue to play well, and stay focused on doing your job on the ice, and that's what's in front of the U.S. team today.
The Chinese squad just able to squeak out the win by 1, 7-6 over the United States back in draw 4. So as we get set for draw number 5, you look at the overall competition, and with 2 games left for each team on the women's side, it's still wide open.
Yeah, it definitely is. The teams have to stay focused, especially the teams that are maybe 2-1, they're trailing. They have to make sure that they bring their A game to the rink, play good, stay focused on the process, and try and bring the other teams back to them.
Well, New Zealand looking to break through with its first win. We mentioned the youngest team here. No player older than age 23. For more on tonight's game, let's check in with Tracy Wilson.
I spoke with U.S. skip Nina Roth, and she said Team New Zealand like to keep a lot of rocks in play, and she expects the New Zealand skip to make some beautiful freezes. So her game plan, she said they have to stay patient, make the big shots, and keep the pressure on Team New Zealand.
Thanks, Tracy. Let's meet the teams for tonight, the USA and New Zealand.
Nina Roth, skip.
Jamie Sinclair, third.
Rebecca Hamilton, second.
Tabitha Peterson, lead.
Chelsea Farley, third.
Olivia Jararanjan, fourth.
Tessa Farley, second.
Eleanor Adviento, lead.
So there are the teams. See the rocks in play. The U.S. throwing red rocks to match their outfits. New Zealand has the hammer, the last shot advantage here in the opening end, and we're underway.
Top 4, girls.
Tabitha Peterson, 25-year-old from Eagan, Minnesota, the lead for Team USA.
Let it work a little bit. Here it comes.
Tabitha starting with the out-turn draw here, trying to just get it into the top of the forefoot.
Top 4. Looks good. Looks good.
Trying to get things started here and just
Nice shot, Tab.
keep it nice and simple if New Zealand will have it.
We mentioned that the United States comes in here off a loss in its last game, and New Zealand is yet to win. When you know you have an opponent that's struggling, are you more aggressive? Do you play more passive? How do you go about strategizing?
Well, there's obviously different approaches, but a lot of times when you play a team that's struggling a little bit, it's most important to really stay focused on your own game and playing well and doing the simple things correctly, and not to let them work their way into the game to make sure that you have control. And make sure you keep your winning ways.
Eleanor Aviento, 19 years old. You'll hear that theme of a lot of young players on this New Zealand squad. Here's the second for Peterson.
3. Wait for it. 2, 3.
So 2-3. Nina wants this
Get
to
it right
be
to center.
relatively tight to the rings. Just trying to guard the one
At the end.
in the top of the forefoot.
Yep. Yep. Whoa.
You can see how much the rock curls as it starts to slow down. That's when the girls will actually sweep this rock if needed to be, and they get a lot more curl out of it.
See Chelsea Farley, the skip for New Zealand, little unorthodox for the Kiwi group. She won't shoot last. She shoots third rocks for this team. And here's the second stone of this opening end for Aviento.
Sometimes what teams will do, Jason, is have maybe the more experienced player call the game because the strategy gets a little bit complicated. And then somebody else may throw the all-important last 2 rocks, maybe have a little bit better shooter or handle the pressure a little bit better.
The United States against New Zealand. More to come on NBCSN Curling Night after this. NBCSN Curling Night is being brought to you by the United States Olympic Committee. For the latest deals on official Team USA gear, visit TeamUSAShop.com. And by the 2016 World Financial Group Continental Cup of Curling. Come see why Las Vegas rocks. It's a fine night in Minnesota. A look at the mighty Mississippi rolling through the Minnesota region of the Twin Cities. Pete, give us a sense of what to look for tonight.
So here we see the entire sheet of curling ice. This is the field of play. We have the house, or the 12-foot circle. That's the rocks have to touch that in order to count or go on the scoreboard. Once they cross the back line, they're out of play, and a rock has to completely cross the hog line in order to be used in that end.
Again, this New Zealand team 4th at the Pacific Asia Championships the last 2 years. Competition that includes the likes of China and Japan, both here at this double round robin event. Rebecca Hamilton from McFarland, Wisconsin. At age 24, part of the U.S. National Championship team this year, which was skipped by the skip in this game, Nina Roth.
You see the USA is going right after New Zealand here in the first end. With that miss, that throw through by New Zealand, Nina could walk up and peel that yellow corner guard, but she's elected to go right under the guard again in lie 2. Try and get a little more pressure on New Zealand in the first end.
Again, New Zealand has the hammer in the last shot, but right now the U.S. has the advantage after that misfire by the Kiwis. Here's Tessa Farley. We mentioned her sister Chelsea is the skip. Tessa 2 years younger than her sister at age 21.
Any roll? No roll. Other one.
You can see Becca a little heavy on her draw, actually came down and corner froze their own rock and set up that double opportunity for New Zealand. I think the USA would like to have had that rock maybe just top of the rings and definitely partway under cover under that center guard.
So after that freeze from the U.S., New Zealand able to knock one of those rocks out, but the other one remains. Still, the shooter staying there for shot rock right now for New Zealand.
That other U.S. stone that went to the back of the 8-foot isn't really a concern for New Zealand. It's under a corner guard, which is their own rock. They may get the opportunity to actually use that rock to their advantage, maybe throwing a freeze to it.
Again, Pete, shorter time frame here, 8 ends. You talk about collapsing the game. That favor one side or the other? Does it favor a team that might be the underdog like a New Zealand that comes in here looking for its first win?
Well, sometimes it does because there's less maneuvering required because there's fewer ends to have to deal with. So, there's a lot of ways to look at it. Sometimes the team that thinks they have the advantage may be the aggressor earlier and really go after their opponent, but Really one thing that's important in these games is the time clock that we haven't talked about a whole bunch, but the teams have to manage that time that they're allotted. If they run out of time, they actually lose the game.
It's 73 minutes in a normal 10-end game, just 59 minutes here in the 8-end game. We saw Nina Roth in the U.S. in one of our earlier shows here on Curling Night where they had some clock issues and they were forced to race towards the end of a game.
Yeah, that just comes with, like Nina said, they hadn't had much time to use those clocks throughout the course of the season, so it's a new element for them to deal with.
Jamie Sinclair, a new element too, a new third for skip Nina Roth, the 22-year-old born in Anchorage, Alaska, lives in Canada, student at Carleton University there. So the U.S. has shot rock here as the stones dwindle in the opening end.
I think that I should be good for that.
We'll get a chance to see now how they deal with that shot rock in the back of the 8-foot. You can see that New Zealand has one half buried under that corner guard. They're going to try and actually come down and tap this redstone back and lie two. Really caused a little bit of concern for the U.S. A couple of stones under cover for New Zealand.
And you see Chelsea Farley using a little bit of an aid as she releases her stone.
Yeah, just a different tool used to help with balance. There's not really a right or a wrong way, to do that. And it just has to do with how players were taught and what they're comfortable with.
Some players will use the broom, others using that support. And that one thrown through. And the misfire for New Zealand.
Thrown too many down this path.
Something for 10.
10?
Yeah.
Nina's now asking Jamie Sinclair to throw the in-turn draw. Clockwise rotation on the handle, trying to get it buried under the other corner guard and lie two and set up a possible force. Try and force New Zealand to take 1 point with the hammer.
And that would be considered a victory in the end for the U.S. Always want to score multiple points when you have the last shot advantage. So the U.S. in position here to give New Zealand some problems right from the get-go.
That didn't get all the way buried. You can see there's a nice shot that New Zealand actually has a chance to come down and hit that shot stone and roll back across the house. Maybe even end up in front of that U.S. stone that's in the back of the 8-foot.
Big call from Chelsea Farley.
See that really curling hard off the center line. Nice job of sweeping by the New Zealand team. They were able to hold that and keep it off of that corner guard.
So New Zealand now able to put itself back into power position. And after that miss in the previous shot, a little relief there for Chelsea Farley.
Nina now just trying to hit and stay right there herself. Trying to keep the force going. She threw a little bit more weight than the New Zealand team. They have a chance to get it under that guard, but because it's behind the tee line, it really isn't doing the U.S. any good. New Zealand now has the opportunity to throw it down to that stone and maybe make a little freeze. With this much curl in the ice, that rock appears to be buried, but the shooter will actually curl all the way to the nose here. Shouldn't be really a big problem for New Zealand to get at that stone.
So we'll see if the coverage is good enough here for the U.S. or if New Zealand can find a way to get there. Thivia Jayarajan.
Top ball.
And she's the vice skip, but shooting last rocks for the Kiwis.
You can see the lack of rotation on the handle here on the New Zealand stone. That's going to make the rock actually curl a fair amount more than if it had maybe 3 or 3.5 rotations.
My side.
Actually over curled and clipped their own that's under the guard to get to where it is. A little bit of good fortune there for New Zealand.
It still ended up at a decent spot.
Throw 7. Right on top.
Okay, yeah. Just corner freeze.
Good double.
They were edge of foot.
I like it.
You got it.
Just a bit of a graze and another yellow stone, and the look of concern there for the moment. But it seems like it's worked out
4:15.
for this point for New Zealand. Let's see what Nina Roth and the U.S. come up with.
I thought it was curling a lot at the beginning, but then it didn't really at the end.
No, it wasn't curling a lot at the ending, but at the end it really went.
We'll get you there.
Good conversation there with the New Zealanders, and they were discussing how much it was curling at the end. And that is due to that lack of rotation. It's interesting that they didn't mention that at all.
Line's good.
Line's good. 6. Moving.
5.
Moving high.
Line's really good. Right to it. 6, 7. Oh.
Team USA is just trying to make a corner freeze
Yeah, line. Yeah.
on shot stone.
7. Oh, you gotta go. Yeah.
Trying to keep the line right so they're still shot rock.
Shot.
And that works for Team USA.
Good sweep, guys.
Great job.
Stay what?
Just a fraction closer than that yellow New Zealand stone, so it's the counting stone for now.
U.S. is shot for the moment, but it looks like New Zealand can come down and just give it a little tap sideways and count 2. They don't have to move it very far, only a couple of inches.
Last stone of this opening end for New Zealand.
Waiting for it to move. It's got to curl quite a bit still.
You can pick now.
With the extra weight, you can see that one didn't curl nearly as much as the first one. Looks like a steal 1 for the USA.
1 red.
And they will concur. So New Zealand a little off its game at the outset, and the United States taking advantage, stealing 1 when the Kiwis had the hammer.
1 red.
So they'll clear the stones and set them up for end number 2. The United States looking to even its record at 2-2 overall. They take the early lead, 1-0 over Team New Zealand.
We like our stones. We're gonna put an end hers because that one was straight and then it moved.
NBCSN Curling Night, presented by the United States Olympic Committee. Plenty of hot spots in the Twin Cities area. The coolest spot, we got you covered here at Fogarty Arena. Four Seasons Curling Club serving as the host for Curling Night. Jason Knapp, Pete Fenson, action underway here in end number 2, the United States, with a steal of 1 in the opening end. Looking to put themselves in position to score one more time here. Jamie Sinclair with a stone here for the U.S.
With a 1-point lead here, the U.S. just trying to eliminate these New Zealand stones in the back of the house and keep things nice and simple.
Fine work for the Americans, who lie 2.
Here, nice work on the brushes by Team USA, able to hold that and get it by the guard. But now, with those 2 U.S. stones behind the tee line, it's actually an opportunity for New Zealand to throw one around this center guard and actually use those rocks for backing, causing a little trouble for Team USA. Just more stones in the back to navigate if they're trying to remove the New Zealand stone.
Chelsea Farley. She's a software engineer back in New Zealand.
Back 4. Yeah, back 4. Okay.
So they're laying off here, waiting for the rock to come down in speed a little bit and start to curl. This one looks a little heavy.
And it is heavy and just biting on the back of that 12-foot red ring. So another shot just a little off kilter for the Kiwis.
Yeah, not the first time we've seen these athletes struggle with the speed. Ice is real fast in Blaine, and they're not picking up on that soon enough. And that rock should definitely have been on the other side of the house in order to give New Zealand an opportunity to use it to advance to the button to score.
4.
Second in this end for Jamie Sinclair.
So this looks like a couple of different throws by Jamie Sinclair. The first one they were sweeping early because it was over curling, and the second one maybe she made too much of a correction on her release, and it didn't curl enough. You can see it's wide open here.
So the U.S. lying 3, but New Zealand with the opportunity to try to get out that stone. Again, Pete, not really a lot of cover there.
No, that had to curl quite a bit more. You can see it's wide open plus a little bit here for New Zealand, and that guard is so long. New Zealand could actually hit and roll under that guard if they wanted to, or they could come down and just tap the U.S. stone in the back of the house also. But with only a couple of rocks left here, they've elected to remove it.
Chelsea Farley looking intently at this shot.
Any roll?
If there is a
Good.
Nice, guys.
Almost perfect. That needed to curl just a few more inches. You can see it's still wide open for Nina.
So the reigning national championship skip, Nina Roth, settling back into her spot. Won the title last year in Philadelphia. What a thrill. And doing it against one of the best 10-time national champ, 2-time Olympian, Allison Pottinger, and her team.
Yep, Lord. Just to know.
So Roth,
Talking about the draws.
now married, former Nina Spatola, and continuing to elevate her curling career with this high-performance team.
The plan for Nina now just to come down with the intern, hit this yellow stone on the nose, maybe even roll a little bit under the guard. You can see this one's really curling early. She must have got this going on release, and they can't keep it off the guard. With as much curl and as aggressive as these rocks are, any inward motion on release really makes the rocks curl, and you can see that was the problem there for Nina. That was gone early, which means when she let it go, she sort of pointed it at the target instead of throwing it right at the broom.
nice hidden stick.
Well, some of these teams will judge rocks from the opposition to help them figure out the speed of the ice. When New Zealand is struggling, and does that make it harder for your team to figure some things out?
Yeah, it does. And every team throws the rock a little differently, so you know, you want to actually watch where they put the broom, but you have to be careful as to how much information you actually use there.
And New Zealand with a miscue again, taking out their own stone.
Same sort of a throw there by New Zealand. The only difference is it was on the outturn side of the sheet, but once again, she sort of pointed it a little bit too, and just no chance to hold it.
Well, another sizable error. The Kiwis trying to laugh it off for the moment, but for the second straight end with hammer, it's the U.S. in position to score.
Yeah, Nina now has the opportunity to put a fair amount of pressure on New Zealand. She can throw this draw right into the top of the forefoot. Probably just wants to bite the blue ring. At best.
Piece the 4.
Line's good. Top 4.
Line's really good. Just a piece.
Line's real good. Top 4.
Continuing to call top 4 the desired location for this stone.
Jamie just wants to make sure that Becca and Tabitha know right where they want it to stop. You can see here they misjudged that a fair amount. They wanted it just to be top of the forefoot, which forces New Zealand to make a cold draw for one. Now you can see it slip behind the tee line. They can just come down to it. They can actually use all those red stones if they want to. It actually looks like there's probably a triple available on the out turn for New Zealand, but it doesn't look like they see it. They've elected to just take one.
Last stone of this end for Jay Orangen.
Top 8.
Here they call top 8, so the sweepers think it's a little light. Now they're off it.
Still waiting, trying to will it to the right spot.
That's actually overswept. They thought it was light when they let it go, so they hit it early. You can see it slides just through the 4-foot. Looks like a steal at 2 for the U.S.
Wow, so they steal 1 in the first and 2 in the second. And without the hammer, the United States have constructed a 3-0 lead on New Zealand. So the Kiwis falling behind, and the U.S. saying thank you very much.
Makes sense. They're fast. Diamond's 410. All of us are throwing the points.
NBCSN Curling Night, presented as always by the United States Olympic Committee. Jason Knapp, Pete Fenson, and the action rolling on here in Blaine, Minnesota. The United States taking advantage of some spotty play by the New Zealand squad of the first 2 ends. A steal of 1 in the first and snaring 2 more when New Zealand had the hammer in the second. So the Kiwis again will shoot last, and the United States trying to protect this 3-0 advantage.
Line's good.
With a 3-point lead now, the U.S.'s goal is just to keep things nice and clean. Nina's asked Tabitha to throw the first one in the top of the 4-foot again.
6. Top 4.
And they're not really interested in having any rocks around, especially corner guards. They want to make sure they keep their rocks in front of the tee line here.
Good shot. Nice shot, Tab.
Chelsea Farley ready to set up for this initial stone for New Zealand in this third end from Eleanor Aviento, born in the Philippines from Manila, representing New Zealand.
Line looks good.
New Zealand wanting to establish the corner guard right away here, taking advantage of the free guard zone.
Shot, Eleanor. Shot.
A little surprised here with the 3-point lead. Nina's called for the center guard as opposed to throwing it in the house and just starting to peel the end out.
2. Yep. Line's a little tight. Yep. Line's good. 2, 3. Just on the
Throwing one short of the rings here. This actually gives New Zealand a little bit more of an opportunity to score and generate some offense.
Yep. Gotta finish. Go, go, go. Hard now. Yep. Hard. Yep. Nice shot.
Now the Americans seem happy with it.
Well, that's where she asked Tabitha to put it. I would probably prefer to see it in the rings, because now New Zealand has the opportunity to come around that guard and freeze on the U.S. stone in the top of the 4-foot.
Aviento,
Yeah, back.
age 19, the youngest competitor at this event. And men's and women's teams for the 4 countries, United States, China, Japan, and New Zealand.
Oh, good, Eleanor.
Sorry, guys.
Nina trying to get this out the back of the house.
And you heard the call from Eleanor Aviento apologizing for missing the target.
Now the peel in the corner guard. With Becca Hamilton's first stone, they're allowed to hit rocks in front of the house. Just trying to hit and roll out of play.
Nice shot, Beck. That's perfect. Atta girl.
And those first 4 in each end, if they're in front of the house, can't be removed due to that free guard zone rule. So now New Zealand trying to find a way to find some consistency and then find some scoring. Here's Tessa Farley.
New Zealand trying to hit and roll to a corner guard here.
Any roll. Get ya! Get! Other one.
A little good fortune there. That actually overcurled, but still made contact with the one in the 4-foot.
So they remove one of the United States stones, but the U.S. still has shot rock for the moment.
I think it's the same
This
thing
United
on the
States team, they're loving getting used to dealing with their new coach, the great women's player Ann Swisshelm, now leading this U.S. women's team.
Our new team was put together in the beginning of the season with our coach. She put us all together, chosen from the combine.
I've been on teams where we didn't really have a coach or structure, and this year definitely have a lot of structure, which I'm good with because I kind of need direction sometimes. So it's nice to have Ann around to point us in the direction we need to go.
She brings a lot to the team. She has a great personality and she knows a lot. She's been around the game for a long time. She makes sure that we're where we need to be at the right time, and so she brings a lot to our team.
It's her first year coaching, so we're all kind of learning it together. But she's doing great. She has a lot of heart for the sport, and she really enjoys coaching. She enjoys being part of the team, and she just gets excited when we're playing well or when she sees us being excited and really into the games. She just gets excited watching it. So she's doing really well so far, and we enjoy having her on board.
Plenty of rocks on the way. Of course, it's NBCSN Curling Night.
Firm. Should I throw?
Back in Minnesota, dilemma time here for the United States. Let's listen in.
Half a rock.
Try to hit over here.
Yeah.
But if not, and I knows it, that's not the worst.
That's fine
thing.
too, yeah. Okay.
So, Pete, the U.S. with a 3-0 lead, but suddenly New Zealand lying 3 here in the third.
Yeah, the U.S. definitely in a little bit of trouble here. With the 3-point lead, the one thing Nina refused to do in this end is clear that center guard, and now we can see that New Zealand's got a couple of them loaded under there. There is a double possibility here for Nina. That's what she's going to try and do, throw the out turn, firm weight, and try and remove these 2 stones in the 4-foot.
And if we know that,
Yeah, that's
not the
fine
worst.
too,
Yeah.
I actually like the nose hit because there's this one in the back of the house hanging on, and they still have one under cover. If Nina hits and rolls out, New Zealand still has a chance to lie 3.
9. Oh. Close. Yep.
So plenty of debate.
Yep.
What about the delivery?
Hard.
Looks like she's pretty close here. Oh, that's not a good result. Not only did she roll out, but she didn't make the double. She didn't remove that second stone of New Zealand's.
And as you alluded to before, that other yellow stone lurking there in the back. So New Zealand still lying 3.
And they now have a wide open hit to lie 4, actually. You can see that red stone all by itself on the side of the house. New Zealand seems to be ignoring it. They're
Top height, right? Yeah.
talking about throwing the draw around this center guard again.
Still would have been, I guess you could have gotten 2 of them maybe. Yeah, we just needed the back 2 to be overlapped a little bit more.
The post-shot analysis
Top 8, top 4.
always important for a team that's still looking to learn about one another. Again, some of these top players in the United States put together on this high-performance team representing Team USA. New Zealand, can they capitalize and get back in this game?
You can see this one really curling at the end here again with no rotation on the handle, and it's almost completely buried around that center guard.
So some struggles for New Zealand first two ends. And now in position to really make a huge comeback here in the third.
In order to get out of this little situation that they're in, Nina needs to hit this Yellowstone in the back of the forefoot and actually roll under the pile. I think she can get shot rock in the back of the forefoot. Got to roll about 2 feet probably. And here's a great shot. You can see Nina has to hit this one in the back of the four and try and roll right to the center line, under cover.
Sweepers working it hard for a moment, now laying off. Got the hit, but not the roll.
Overswept just a little bit by Jamie Sinclair there. Maybe the weight wasn't exactly what she was expecting. If Nina threw it a little bit harder, it won't curl quite as much. But at least they stayed, and forcing New Zealand to hit and stay for 3. Had Nina rolled out, it's actually a wide open hit on the other stone for 4 for New Zealand. So that's definitely the pro side of that shot.
The 23-year-old Jay Arjun, born in Sri Lanka. Really barking at this stone. Big moment here for New Zealand. And it's perfect. New Zealand, after giving up 3 over the first 2 ends, gets 3 of its own with the hammer here in the third. And it's a new game, even up at 3 apiece here on NBCSN Curling Night. NBCSN Curling Night presented by the United States Olympic Committee. Twin Cities, region of Minnesota, gracious host for the showcase of curling with the United States, China, Japan, and New Zealand, all taking part in this double round robin event for the men and the women, featured tonight on NBCSN Curling Night. The United States and New Zealand, and suddenly we've got a game again. The U.S. stealing 1 in the first, 2 in the second, before New Zealand finally took advantage of having the hammer with 3 in the third. So New Zealand now with their third, Chelsea Farley, shooting as we pick up action here in the fourth, and the U.S. has the hammer for the first time in the match.
Yeah, the U.S. had things going their way for a couple of ends. 1 or 2 tactical miscues by Nina, and New Zealand's able to get a 3 and get back in the game. Things are looking a little better here for the U.S. of A. They got 1 in the back of the house, and looks like this one's pretty well wide open. Now trying to just hit and lie 2.
Jamie Sinclair, we mentioned, going to college in Canada. Grew up in a military family, so used to a lot of the travel that's required for high-level curling.
Nice throw.
Hopping from one place to another. That's part of the learning process for these players as they get to this level of international competition. Not only managing their games, but managing all the other responsibilities that go with it when you're going from event to event. Second coming up for Chelsea Farley. We mentioned she's a software engineer. To tell you all about the new generation that you need to know, ask the players about some background for them. Category under languages spoken, she put English and then a handful of computer programming languages. Bright girl.
Nice, guys.
Nicely executed in-turn hit.
Shot.
But still a pretty straightforward end here. U.S. just looking to trade here. Hit and stay right on the nose.
Yeah.
Looks like Jamie got that curling right out of hand.
Hurry! Yeah,
Sweepers are trying to hold it.
Go, 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 go.
Go where?
She was saying go back, so I was like, where?
No, I'm like, why?
Front end having a little of relief
Don't worry about it.
after sweeping that.
Nice sweep job there by the U.S. They're able to keep that rock on the paint. They still lie two.
Actually, other way. Charles. Other way.
What?
Can I come the other way?
I think it might kill too much, but we can try.
Oh,
I guess
okay,
we've
fine.
always
We'll
got
go
that
that way.
one, so yeah, let's go the
Oh,
other
no,
way.
that's all right. Charles. Control down.
Jay Orangen
Close.
Trying to just hit and roll over on top of that other U.S. stone that's in the back of the house.
No, don't roll.
Trying to roll in far enough to be shot rock.
Shot. Shot, bro. Shot, did it.
That's actually a pretty nice result. There's a pretty good chance that they will have a double available on their last shot if Nina hits this on the nose.
Well, they went back and forth, did the New Zealand team, to figure out which way they wanted to go with that shot. Seems like they picked the right way. And Nina Roth getting set up. We saw some of the New Zealand players utilizing a stabilizer as they come off the hack. Nina Roth removes the right mitten and uses the brush to balance herself. Same pre-shot routine for her every time.
Hard.
Whoa, whoa.
Yep.
And the glove comes off
Yep.
for feel. It's no different than a golfer taking the glove off on the green. Curler wants to take that mid off so they get a good feel of the handle of the stone.
Fine hit and stay for the skip for Team USA.
Nice work.
So a couple options now for New Zealand with that nose hit by Nina Roth. They can hit and roll over in front of that red stone, or there is a double available too. It looks like maybe half a rock double. If they hit the top red stone about halfway and spin the shooter, they may be able to make the double.
Control. Yep. Yes.
Yep. Yep, hard. Yep, hard. Yep, hard. Yep, hard. Yep, hard. Shot, bro.
Looks like they held it enough. At least they stayed for shot.
Great sweep, guys.
They did not make the double. It actually over curled. I think they're still struggling with the amount of curl in these rocks.
Doesn't matter.
Main thing is, excuse me. Yeah, I've got all of it plus, Jim.
But it looks like a wide open hit here for Nina for two.
Just normal.
Yeah.
I've got all of it plus.
Yep.
Yeah.
It's good.
Jamie's moved nice here. Yeah.
Okay.
Well, first time in this game that the U.S. has had the hammer and the chance for them to jump back on top. If Roth can find the right spot.
9.5.
Yep.
Yep. Clean.
Yeah!
Hard. Hard. Yeah. Hard. Hard. Go, 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 hard.
Sit. Sit.
But it rolls out.
Yep.
So the chance to get two with the hammer doesn't happen, and the U.S. has to settle for one. So a mistake for the United States. They do take the lead back, but New Zealand regains the hammer here in the fifth end coming up. NBCSN Curling Night is being brought to you by the 2016 World Financial Group Continental Cup of Curling. Come see why Las Vegas rocks. And by USA Curling. Support your national team by visiting www.usacurl.org. Here in Minnesota, we are halfway through our feature match tonight on NBCSN Curling Night. Jason Knapp and Olympic bronze medalist, 8-time U.S. national champ Pete Fenson along with you. Glad to have you with us. Now, the action here for the U.S. and New Zealand will pick up. An intriguing match, Pete, with the U.S. without Hammer still able to build an early lead.
Yeah, I think the U.S. in the first half was the recipient of a few misses by New Zealand. Here we see New Zealand elects to throw a draw for one against 3 U.S. counters.
Ended up just like the first. The U.S. got a steal of 1 on the opening end. And with this one not executed well enough by New Zealand, the U.S. able to count 2, so they steal 3 combined over the first 2 ends. And then, with that big advantage, suddenly a little calamity here for the U.S. in the third.
Yeah, New Zealand gets a couple of rocks under the center guard. And with Nina failing to hit and roll under those 2 rocks, we have the opportunity to hit and stay for 3 and tie the game up.
And the Kiwis did just that. So suddenly, new game in the fourth. The United States finally with Hammer for the first time. And they don't quite take advantage the way they hope.
Yeah, this is an important thing to remember. Now, an open hit for 2. It's important for Nina to put these points on the board. And she maybe gets this curling just a little bit and just spins out of the rings.
So no 2 for the U.S. They do get the single point, and they have that advantage here to the second half of this game. Just moments ago, our Tracy Wilson catching up with the United States skip Nina Roth to talk about the proceedings to this point.
Nina, solid start, but you did run into some trouble in the third. Your assessment of what happened?
Just a couple misses. They've been making some really nice shots, lobbing them into the forefoot, and that's what kind of got us into some trouble in that third end. But we just need to be more precise in our shot making and our rock placement, and then we'll get them in the second half.
Now your team is making a substitution. Why the change?
Just to get Eileen in and comfortable and playing on the ice and stuff, just to give her a chance to play.
Okay, thanks, Nina.
Thank you.
So Eileen Sormanen will sub in for Tabitha Peterson as the U.S. lead. Team USA hoping to create more action for Jamie Sinclair. She's got plenty of action in curling and in class.
I'm going to university. I'm living up in Canada, so there's a lot of travel and work that I'm doing on the road to just try to pass my classes and get by, and then obviously all the time that I put into the off-ice training as well. So it's definitely just trying to figure out what works for you. It's a challenge, but I think it's worth it all in the long run. This year I am playing third for Nina. It's different for me because I have been playing skip for a while. So the third position, I kind of have to be the mediator between the front end and Nina in the back end. So it involves a lot of communication and relaying information back and forth, and kind of sometimes being the cheerleader on the team. So that's different for me, but it's been working well.
And the U.S. hoping to have more to cheer about coming up here against China, trailing 4-1 and number 5 just around the corner for Minnesota. NBCSN Curling Night presented by the United States Olympic Committee. The downtown in Minneapolis, always a hub of activity. Fogarty Arena, the curling epicenter for us on NBCSN Curling Night. The United States, 4-3 lead, second half of this game against New Zealand underway. And our first look at Eileen Sormanen, who subbed in as the lead for Team USA, 27-year-old from Duluth, Minnesota. Graduate there from UMD, Minnesota Duluth.
Hard, 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 hard.
Sometimes in this situation that Eileen's been put in, it's a little tough to come in the middle of a game. She hasn't gotten really much time to warm up. She didn't get to partake in the practice and throw any rocks before the game, so she's coming in cold. Tough position to be in sometimes.
Here's Aviento for New Zealand.
Control down. Control down.
She waving goodbye.
Whoa, whoa.
I think she's saying, whoa, whoa, it's got to curl a little bit.
Shot, Eleanor. Great.
all the quirks and nuances of each player and their signals and gestures to their team. Whatever works. Nina Roth again surveying, wanting to get Eileen Sormanen some time at this event for Team USA. Becca Hamilton, 83% for her in the first half of the game.
T-line. 7-6. We want a 7, guys. Right down to it.
A good start for Becca at 83%.
Eileen, go. Whoa.
Doing a good job with the second position. An interesting call here by Nina Roth with a 1-point lead playing the fifth end. She's asked Becca Hamilton to throw the freeze to this Yellowstone as opposed to just removing it.
And no freeze, no removal. Hamilton offline.
Yeah.
You see this just slides through the rings. Not exactly what Team USA had in mind.
Yeah.
Becca again having trouble with the speed of the ice, overthrowing that one just a little bit.
So New Zealand having the hammer back. The U.S. only getting one when it had the hammer in the last end.
That's okay. Shot test.
At this early point in the end,
Shot test.
New Zealand could actually just throw the corner guard on that Yellowstone over there. But they've elected to split the house. It's a tougher way to get the deuce because there's so many rocks left.
Is there a double? Or no?
No.
They have to try and they have to make so many perfect shots here in order to keep the deuce going. Whereas if they just throw the corner guard, more than likely the U.S. will either remove the corner guard or hit the one in the house, and then New Zealand can go around the corner guard.
Yep. Whoa. Yep. Whoa.
So an opportunity for the U.S. here to hit and roll to the middle.
Yes. Roll it. Roll it. Go, 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 go.
Try and get these rocks a little closer together. Maybe set up a double.
So that one rolling clearly into the 8-foot. It is shot for the time being for Team USA.
Yep.
21-year-old Tessa Farley, her shooting numbers through the first 4 ends.
Really hard, guys. Really hard.
New Zealand trying to hit and stay, or maybe hit and roll towards the outside just a little bit.
Really hard. No roll. Shot test. Shot.
New Zealand happy with that. Kiwis lied too. New Zealand hasn't been all that sharp, but chance to take the lead if they can get their deuce with the hammer in N5. An empty house and just skip stones left here in N5 on NBCSN Curling Night in this matchup between Nina Roth and Team USA and New Zealand. Americans up 1 here in the 5th.
What? Yeah, mine was a 4-0 and it went through,
So the U.S. getting back into position.
4-10.
And Pete, it's got to be a weird game for the U.S. They were essentially gifted the lead, and then they gave it right back and still didn't capitalize when they have the hammer. And now, with all this going on, there's the potential for them to squander this advantage.
Yeah, a little bit of a test right now for Team USA mentally, having given up that big lead and then missing a chance to take the lead with a hit for 2. They just have to stay calm and continue to make as many shots as they can and try and maneuver to have the hammer in the last end.
Got curl.
Nina Roth certainly would hope to have better percentage than 70% at this juncture of the game.
It's on it, yeah.
Heavier than she wanted to be. She was trying to throw this draw over in the area of these rocks that are in the back of the house and maybe give New Zealand a chance to jam it on those.
What do you think?
But being a little heavy, she actually tapped it back, and now it's just basically an open hit for New Zealand. The weight control issues are still there for Team USA.
Yeah, sure.
Still have a tendency to be overthrowing these shots.
And this would be a big moment for a young team. We mentioned no player on Team New Zealand older than 23 years of age. 2 players that age. Tessa Farley, 21, Aviento, 19, looking for their first win of the competition. And to do it against the hosts, that would be huge. So the house cleared away again and looked like we're tracking towards a possible blank end.
Yeah, maybe some technical difficulties there by New Zealand. Just a simple, straightforward, open hit. Maybe flared it a little bit and got it running away from that stone. You can see she hit and rolled out on the high side.
A little bit more to the side on that yellow one.
Same weight? Yeah, 410 fine.
There's the line score. The U.S. scoring in 3 of the 4 ends, but that big triple point effort for New Zealand in the third has put the pressure more on Team USA.
Need backing? Room? It's coming down a little. It's going through.
Looks like Nina's heavy again.
Not really.
They're looking for backing. They want something to run into in the back of the house.
No backing and no rocks in the house. And 1 stone left.
Would you say this one's out, bro?
Just making sure it's official that it is clear.
And then I'm just trying to decide if it's in or not. I can throw at it just in case, and then we try for the roll. What do you think? I reckon it's out, but I reckon be safe without it.
Yeah, should I just hit it out?
Actually, from this angle, it doesn't look out. Yep, hit it out.
And again, Pete, for people new, that from our perspective looks like it's out, but sometimes it's difficult to tell unless you're right directly over it.
Yeah, so the idea here for Team New Zealand is to position themselves directly over that stone to try and see if it's on the rings. And there you can see clearly it looks out. But they've elected to take a run at it anyway. They just want to make sure it's not on the paint. They're going to hit and roll out, blank the end.
Of course, if you've watched curling at other competitions, there is a measuring unit that they'll use to bring out to decide which rock is closer at times, whether a rock is in and out if there's not agreement between the teams. And that stone making it official. Everything's out, no scoring, a blank end. New Zealand keeps the hammer, and we keep rolling on NBCSN Curling Night from Minnesota.
Really good in, guys.
Yeah, good shot, bro. That's good. Okay.
I think.
Sixth then, U.S. still leading 4-3 over New Zealand. Part of this double round robin competition. Featured on NBCSN Curling Night. Jason Knapp here with Pete Fence. And action underway. Get a blank end in the 5th. New Zealand retaining the hammer. And Jamie Sinclair, the United States third. She puts the rock into play. And the U.S. lies 1 as this one gets going down the sheet of ice.
Right here.
With one right on top of the button here.
Not in. Just this line.
Team USA is just trying to throw a nice center guard on top of it.
2. Eileen.
Yep.
Hard. Hard.
Trying to get it fairly close to the rings.
Whoa, whoa, whoa.
You see?
Nice shot.
So on the line for Team USA. Jamie Sinclair will have another stone to throw
Good if we can make it. Yeah, I think it might be quite hard.
in this end.
Yeah. Control? She's clear. Yeah, okay.
So that guard ending in a pretty good place for Team USA. New Zealand is elected to peel it, trying to open up the middle.
Control, guys.
Not a bad end for New Zealand to score in, actually, even though they trail. But if they can blank and take the hammer to the 7th, they're perfectly happy with that too. Right out of hand, the sweep call came. She was a little narrow. And even though she made contact with the one on the top of the button, they left the center guard, and still an opportunity for Team USA to come around and now lie 2, actually. You can see this curls a little more than they wanted to. They're trying to hit about half of that stone and roll away.
Great sweep.
Should be all there.
Second for Jamie Sinclair. Mentioned her globe trotting growing up in a military family. Says she speaks 3 languages. Loves learning as long as it doesn't include math.
There.
Thinks she can handle curling math.
Another one thrown to the back of the house by Team USA. Big chance there for them to put one on the top of the button again under cover. And they're just not throwing those shots to sweeping. They're just overthrowing. They're kicking out of the hack a little too hard.
Top 4. Yeah.
You've made the analogy to golf a few times here. When that's going on, how do you go about making that adjustment? Is it from the release point in the hack? Is it your release of the rock? How do you go about kind of figuring things out on the fly in the midst of a game?
Well, typically when rocks are being overthrown, they're driving too hard out of the hack. So with communication with the front end, so they know how fast the ice is, which they should by this point in the game already, they just need to back off the gas a little bit when they're leaving the hack, not kick out quite so hard, and throw those rocks out there so they can be swept and positioned correctly.
Sorry, guys.
New Zealand able to hit that red American stone out of the back.
They just seem to keep on gliding.
New Zealand and the yellow rocks. It's the counting stone right now for the Kiwi.
Yeah, let's do it at the same time. 4:10, 4:15. Top 4. Okay, give us a 4:10, 4:15.
Can you hear the 4:10, 4:15 calls again? Split times for Team USA to track.
Yep, that's the amount of time it takes for the rock to go from the back line to the near hog line.
All right, top 4.
And it hasn't really changed. The ice has been pretty consistent throughout the game.
And the stopwatch off the right pocket of the U.S. skip. You see the stopwatch being utilized by the front end, too, tracking that stone to give them a gauge.
Still got room.
Let us know when.
Top 4 is good.
Yep.
Turn them on now.
Sounds like the weight's pretty close. They're just waiting for the line to get right.
Hard bury it.
Line's good. Full 4 foot.
Still want to make sure it stops well above the T line.
Yep. Great shot.
Right on the button.
Sorry. Nice job.
That's definitely better. But had it stopped even a couple feet shorter, it makes it a little bit more difficult for New Zealand. As it is now, they can come down and just give that a little tap and be shot. You don't have to move it too far, maybe a foot or two.
I think that she got a 20 on that.
Top 12. Top 4.
So you heard Nina talking to Jamie there, and she said Eileen got a 420. So Becca had told her throw a 410 or a 415. So the ice is even faster than they think it is.
Back through. Chelsea, do we want to see? Never mind.
Sorry, my bad.
And again, New Zealand still struggling figuring out the ice. And missing an opportunity with Hammer here to really put some pressure on the U.S. The U.S. still that shot rock in the center of the circle.
We'll see what they do.
Now Nina with a chance to throw the identical shot on her second one. Just going to try and come around and freeze right on the one on the button. Really make it nearly impossible for New Zealand to score. About the only thing they would have is that little angle run in. on that close rock, that close yellow stone on the left side of the screen.
Just got a top 8 foot, guys. All right.
She's got a big window here to hit, anywhere from top 8 to top button.
Line's good.
Got room.
Just top 8. Room.
6, 7.
Room. Got it, curl. Switch. Switch.
7.
Oh.
Gotta come over. Take it back. Yep.
Last U.S. stone of this sixth end.
Hard. Gotta go. Yep.
All the way, yep.
Keep going. Right to it. Back.
Yeah, right to it. Go. All the way, Eileen, yep.
So it's still heavy, but
419, so.
on the fly. A pretty good call by Jamie Shielex to make sure they sweep it and get it past that stone on the button so they don't leave it double for New Zealand. Still, though, we continue to see just some issues with what I think are probably concentration issues for Team USA. Don't have a very good handle on draw weight right now.
Last rock of this end. New Zealand with the hammer.
Back 4. Back 8.
This one has to curl a long ways, has to get all the way to the center line to make contact with shot rock.
And it is not going to get there. And if it goes past, the U.S. is going to get 2, and that's what happens. Big miscue for New Zealand here in this sixth end, and the United States, for the third time in the game, without hammer, gets a score. They stole 1 of the first, 2 in the second, and 2 more in the sixth. And the U.S. will take it. They've got a 6-3 lead after 6 on curling night.
I don't mind 2 on top of each other. 420.
The United States 6, New Zealand 3, and number 7 underway here in Minnesota on curling night. And another look at Eileen Sormanen, who subbed in for Tabitha Peterson as the U.S. lead at the midpoint of this game. Her second stone here, N7.
Freeze right on the nose.
And a nice opportunity for Eileen Sormanen to get in the game here and play on this very fast ice. These rocks are quite aggressive. You can see how much they're curling, about 4 or 4.5 feet. So it's good that Ann Swisshelm was able to get her in the game.
Again, the new coach for the United States women team. A different structure for USA Curling going forward as opposed to players forming their own teams at the highest level. Now, USA Curling and its coaching staff holding a combine to recognize some of the top athletes and then grouping them together to fit the pieces in the proper puzzle to give Team USA the best chance to compete at the international level.
Yeah, right. And, you know, Jason, you say picking the best players, which is what happens, but also trying to put the right players in the right positions. And that's kind of some of the challenge because these players have to learn how to live and work and play together and you know how to get each other to perform at a high level.
Certainly part of the process for the United States to improve upon its standings after subpar showings at the Olympics in Sochi last year for both the men and the women, neither coming close to qualifying for the medal rounds.
What's the shot? Board.
2 in the house here for Team USA in the 7th. If you're New Zealand, Pete, and you're struggling to find your form, you're trailing, how do you go about working your way back in front?
Well, one really good way to do that is to rely on your teammates. You know, they always have a little bit of extra information. I mean, the teams are struggling with the speed of the ice right now. And, you know, so one of the things about the game of curling is you have teammates that can help you.
New Zealand able to remove 1 of the red stones from Team USA. But still shot rock for Nina Roth and the Americans.
Same weight.
So the team at the other end was asking Nina if they should just hit the one in the house. They think that the corner guard's so long that it's really not a factor, but
Hurry! Well, you got it.
Nina's decided the corner guard's got to go.
And that rock from Becca Hamilton does the trick.
I can draw down to it.
Draw down? Okay.
Yep. Top 4 weight test, top 4, top 8's good.
Yep.
This for Team USA, one of those games that's part of the learning process too, with new players coming together. When you're not on your game, still finding a way to be able to pick up a W, even though everything isn't as sharp as you'd like.
Yeah, that's right. That's really important too, Jason, because you're not always going to be playing as well as you would like. And so learning and figuring out how to win games with your B game is very important.
Okay, whoa.
Top 4.
Mine's looking good on its own.
Top 4.
Top 8. Top 4.
Top
Yep.
Usually requires a little more fortitude. The teams and the players have to kind of hang in there
It's my bad. Should
and
give
just
you one.
continue to do the best that they can do.
Sorry, bro.
Throw firm.
Good.
It's pretty thin. Got to hit it.
So by
up here.
removing the corner guard on the last shot, you can see now the play is brought into the house, and things are a little bit simpler for the US of A. There's an out-turn double opportunity
Yep. Thanks.
for Jamie Sinclair. Just needs to catch a little piece of this first stone.
Close. Curl. Okay. Get out of here.
That's all right. Good shot.
Well, that cleared things up a little bit, but not necessarily how she intended.
She just clipped a little piece of that yellow stone, and due to the fact that these rocks are so lively, she was still able to get it out of the rings.
Top 4 weight, guys.
Needed to catch just another inch or two, and she would have made that double.
We want to be sitting first and second.
Yep. Go. Top 4. Positive.
New Zealand now just trying to keep this deuce going, trying to split the house.
Top 4. Clean. Top 8. Top 4. 2.
Sweepers want to judge the weight properly and try and line these two yellow stones up across the house so they don't leave a double available for the USA.
Whoa.
Shot, Chas.
Shot.
Nice, guys.
New Zealand likes it.
Very good.
My side.
Shot.
Normal.
Nina Roth applying the target. And Jamie Sinclair delivering the rock.
Close. Whoa. Roll it. Whoa. Roll it. Hard
They'd
roll.
like to hit and stay. Right in the open there. That's a good shot by Jamie Sinclair. New Zealand now has to actually move that rock in order to count 2.
Will do. Nice job. Thanks. Threw it really good.
Yeah, it felt good.
So the U.S. is trying to manage this game the rest of the way, despite not playing as crisp as they would like, but still in position to get the win here in the 7th end, next to last end, in this 8-end game at this competition.
Yeah, and a nice comfortable spot here for Team USA. A 3-point lead playing 7. They're content to even let New Zealand have 2. They would still have a 1-point lead and the hammer coming home.
Nice, guys. Roll.
There's not going to be any.
Shot.
And not much danger here for them, just a wide open house.
Actually, thing, guys. Great calling, bro.
Good shot.
It's so easy to feel on a curl. It looked like it wanted to.
Nina Roth sliding back into her spot. Mentioned the national championship skip. Registered nurse. Relatively new wife, married to her husband. the former Nina Spatola. A lot going on for all of these players, balancing home life, curling, competition. And the dream for this group to continue to work together, have great performances at high-level competitions, including the World Championships this year in Sapporo, Japan. Of course, the spotlight on the Olympics coming up in Korea in 2018. Pretty good effort.
So here right at the end, this one's starting to curl, so the U.S. is trying to roll the shooter under cover here.
Good job. Really good. I like it.
Got it partially buried. It is behind the tee line. New Zealand will have a chance here to throw a freeze and still be shot rock.
Control. Yes.
The overhead view for Jay Orangen.
Any roll?
No roll. Sorry, bro.
New Zealand elects to throw the hit there, which is a little bit of a strange call considering the situation.
I just want to make sure we didn't clutch the front line.
And with that rollout, Team USA is off the hook. A wide open hit for Nina.
Stays normal. Nothing too crazy. Just get a little roll under if we can.
They're guaranteed to have the lead now, playing the final end. Assuming she makes this hit, they'll have at least a 2-point lead.
Clean.
Oh, just clean.
Oh.
Contact is primary concern here. No problem, pretty straightforward. That was wide open. New Zealand, they're a little discussion. They're trying to decide if they should score and play the last end 2 down without hammer, or if they should blank and play the last end 3 down with hammer. Either situation isn't favorable.
We'll just see what happens. Let Chelsea call it.
Yeah.
They never really did decide. You hear them discussing it there. She's just going to throw it and see what happens.
Control. Good kill. Yep.
Shit, sorry guys.
And doesn't like it from the get-go. That's why. A miss.
Okay, bro. Can we not ask me if we want to, like, roll out when I'm about to throw?
Well, oh, sorry.
Yeah, that's good information to
So a
have.
little miscommunication there for the New Zealand side, and the U.S. will take advantage. They've scored more when New Zealand has the hammer than the Kiwis have. And right now, the Americans on verge of closing out Team New Zealand. It's 7-3 for the United States, headed to the final end. This is a game of contrasts. It's been nicknamed both chess on ice and the roaring game, but somehow both of them ring true. Curling is mine and matter, ins and outs, freezes and burns, and you can see proof on the faces of nearly everyone who plays. Who will be roaring at the end of this chess match? The United States or New Zealand? The final frame starts now. Well, the U.S. trying to wrap things up into the final end against New Zealand. Mylene Sormanen starting things off for Team USA. It's a comfortable 7-3 cushion into this last end for the Americans, as they look to get another win in this double round robin competition.
Your broom rattles. Use your foot. That's why my leg.
Now with a 4-point lead, Team USA doesn't need any rocks in play. See, Eileen throws her first one through the house.
Mid-tight.
As soon as they have the opportunity, which would be on Becca Hamilton's first stone, they'll be able to start peeling.
New Zealand trying to set up some guards.
I think it'll stay out. Oh, maybe not.
If it can stay in the free guard zone,
It's okay, Eleanor.
and it won't, that's into the ring.
With that one touching the paint now, Jason, Eileen will be able to peel this rock.
Do you prefer, which way?
If one of those first two stones from New Zealand had stayed in that guard zone, you can't remove it. You could move it from side to side to clear a path. But now that it's in the paint, it's fair game.
So Eileen doesn't want to stay. She just wants to hit half a rock and roll out.
Whoa, whoa. Roll out. Nice shot, Eileen.
The U.S. trying to finish things off here the final end with this healthy advantage. Part of NBC SN Curling Night, this competition for New Zealand, the U.S., China, Japan. Double round robin event, each for the men and the women. Draw number 5, so one game remaining for each of these teams, and the U.S. still in the mix for the title on the women's side.
Good sweeping, guys. Nice sweeping. Shot, Eleanor.
A lot of sweeping there by New Zealand, trying to just get that one over the hog line. Now, just an out-turn peel for Becca Hamilton.
And now that we're at the point in the end where the seconds have begun throwing rocks, they can begin to peel any guards away. And they really were rooting for that to hit the sidewall so they could take it out of play. So just the way the U.S. would like it here in this last end. Clean and open.
Mid. Line looks good.
Yeah, pretty straightforward stuff for the USA to close this game out. They just need to continue to peel the New Zealand stones out.
Nice, guys. Shot, Tess.
Nina Roth setting things up. Chelsea Farley, the other skip, keeping a watchful eye. Chance for her from this angle to read the ice as well. Get ready for the Kiwis' next shot.
Well done. See here, Becca Hamilton just hits a piece of this rock. And rolls a shooter out of play.
Mid long. Line looks good. Mid. Cool. Line looks good. Shot, Tess. Nice calling, guys. Shot, Tess.
New Zealand puts another guard out. And the U.S. ready to get that guard back out of play.
Yep, right to it. You got it. Hard.
Just a little target practice. Maybe turn that over when she let it go. We've talked about this earlier in the game. If you get the rocks started at all on release, they will curl, and I think that's what happened there to Jamie Sinclair.
Now, despite being behind in this game, the New Zealand group still smiling, having fun. Little wardrobe change for Jay Orangen. Short sleeves. Now putting the sweatshirt back on. Everybody else has been fairly bundled up.
Like top 4. Yeah. Basically anywhere in's good though. Like,
Nina Roth just kind of soaking it in, thinking about how to finally put this game to bed for the United States.
Team USA just needs to stay focused. Relatively routine shots ahead of them here.
Top 8. Top 8, top 4. Top 8. Top 4.
Assuming New Zealand gets one around the guard. On the rings, it's still just peeling for Team USA. Trying to eliminate Yellowstones.
Yep, hard! Hard for line! Keep going for line. Hard, guys! Yep, really hard! Shot! Nice sweep, guys. Good sweeping.
Very positive thought process for this New Zealand team. Again, youngest group of the competition. Still looking to break through. Certainly trying to continue to enhance their country's curling profile.
Contact here, and this one's in the books.
The U.S. up 4, and not enough rocks remaining for New Zealand to mount a comeback. So the handshakes commence, and the United States gets another win. 7-3 the final over Team New Zealand. Back to wrap up this night of NBCSN Curling Night. That's coming up. NBCSN Curling Night has been brought to you by the United States Olympic Committee. For the latest deals on official Team USA gear, visit teamUSAshop.com. And by USA Curling and the Manhattan Curling Cup, coming to Chelsea Piers, New York this March. The latest edition of NBCSN Curling Night about to come to a close. But before we go, look back at tonight's featured game. The United States getting it done against New Zealand to the tune of a 7-3 result and another win for Team USA. Nina Roth hanging out with our Tracy Wilson.
Nina, a comfortable win for Team USA. Your thoughts on the game?
It was a bit of a struggle in the beginning. They were making some great shots and has in some difficult situations, but then we turned around in the second half and made some more shots. We're more precise with our rock placement. Ended up getting a nice steal of 2 in the 6th end, which really helped us, and then we were able to keep it clean for the rest of the game.
Big picture in this tournament, are you and your teammates achieving what you set out to do?
So far, Team USA needs 4 wins today from the men and the women's, and then I think it'll all go down to draw shot, and we'll hopefully pull this one out.
Thanks.
Thank you.
The U.S. hoping it can get to that tiebreaker in the overall team competition, but in this game, big moment, as she talked about, 6th end for the U.S.
Yeah, a big steal at 2 points here in the 6th end. U.S. has one on the button, and New Zealand's trying to just come down and tap it back. With a little bit too much weight. And that big steal of 2.
The Kiwis certainly with another learning game today as they still are looking for their first victory of this competition. But the U.S. in the mix at 3-2. China beating Japan today, so the Chinese lead on the women's side. 6-4 win for that squad today. China 4-1 overall. The U.S. and Japan both at 3-2. How about the American men in their latest affair against the men of New Zealand? And the Americans working hard and able to put away a veteran crew from New Zealand. 6-1 the victory for the United States men's team. Skip Heath McCormick and company able to notch another W. And the men's competition tightly packed. Japan, China, the U.S. all tied for first with 3-2 records. And as Nina Roth touched on, the men and the women of Team USA hoping to get some more wins to be in contention for the overall title. As far as next week, the final draw. Men's draw number 6. It's the U.S. and Japan in a key game as those teams both vie for the men's championship. That's coming up when we see you next time. But for this time, for Pete Fenson, Tracy Wilson, and our NBCSN Curling Night crew, this is Jason Knapp saying good night from Curling Night.